The email came through just after midnight. Tom was in London, prepping for a scene he'd performed versions of 100 times before. Motorcycle leap, camera drone, sunset behind him. But he wasn't sleeping. He rarely did before these scenes, not because he was nervous, but because his mind never slowed down. And tonight, it didn't let him go. The subject line was unremarkable. "Hey Tom, you probably don't remember me." But the sender's name made his chest tighten. Jack Murdoch. The name hadn't been spoken in years. Not on set, not in interviews, not even in Tom's inner circle. Not since that day in '99 when the production shut down and Jack never came back. There was no fallout, no scandal, just absence. A silence no one dared disturb. Tom opened the message, heart thudding in a way it hadn't since his early days in the industry. Asterisk, "Hey Cruz. I know it's been forever. I wasn't sure you'd see this, or care. I'm not asking for anything. I just saw your face on the cover of that new magazine, and it reminded me of who I used to be. If you're ever in California, you might drive past a Walmart in Oxnard. That's my home now. A van parked behind the loading docks. If you hear someone playing Springsteen on an old radio, that's me. Hope you're still doing your own stunts. You were always insane. Murdoch." Asterisk. Tom stared at the screen, not blinking. He could practically hear the gravel in Jack's voice. Low, sarcastic, always one beat away from a laugh. That voice had shouted safety warnings across sets, coached him through wire work on Edge of Tomorrow, and taken more hits than Tom could count. Jack Murdoch was once the most respected stunt double in the industry. The man who could fall off a moving train, roll down a cliff, and crack a joke about it while icing his ribs. He'd stood in for Tom for more than a decade, often doing the impossible with a wink and a cigarette tucked behind his ear. And now he was sleeping in a van behind a Walmart. Tom felt a chill roll over him, heavier than the London fog. He clicked open the calendar on his phone. 3 packed weeks of meetings, shoots, and red carpets. Nothing that couldn't wait. He tapped a number. "Rachel, cancel everything." A sleepy voice crackled on the other end. "Everything, like what, the shoot?" "All of it," Tom said. "Tell McQuarrie I'll make it up to him. I need the jet prepped in 2 hours. We're going to California." The Gulf Stream lifted from the tarmac just before dawn. Tom didn't sleep. He reviewed Jack's file, what little there was. The studio had quietly archived the stuntman's credits years ago. His last recorded job was for a small-budget action film in 2001. After that, nothing. Tom stared out the window, mind replaying memories like a montage. Jack laughing with blood in his teeth after a glass window stunt went wrong. Jack standing with his arms crossed, watching Tom land a rooftop jump, nodding once like a proud older brother. Jack limping off set after a bad fall and telling the medics, "It's just a dent." But the strongest memory wasn't from a movie. It was from a night in Montana when they were filming The Last Target. The shoot had gone late. Tom was exhausted, frustrated with his performance. Jack had found him sitting on a generator box behind the trailers. "You're not supposed to be perfect, Cruz," Jack had said. "You're supposed to be real. The audience doesn't fall for stunts. They fall for moments. You give them that, or all the explosions in the world won't matter." That line had never left him. The Gulfstream touched down in Los Angeles just before 10 a.m. Tom declined the black car waiting on the tarmac. He borrowed a production assistant's dusty Toyota Tacoma and drove himself north, windows down, no security. By noon, he was cruising through Oxnard. The place hadn't changed much: sun-bleached strip malls, taco joints, old movie posters peeling off boarded-up theaters. He passed the Walmart twice before spotting what he was looking for. Tucked behind the loading dock, half hidden by a stack of discarded pallets, was an old green Dodge van. The kind you didn't see anymore. Faded white racing stripe. A cracked windshield covered by a piece of cardboard. Dented passenger door. And from inside, faintly, Springsteen's "Tougher Than the Rest." Tom parked across the lot and sat in the truck, staring. Was this really him? He walked slowly across the hot pavement. As he approached the van, the music grew louder. The passenger window was rolled down halfway, and inside he saw a man slouched in the front seat, boot propped on the dashboard, scribbling something in a notebook. His hair was long and graying, a beard covering most of his face. A weathered denim jacket rested across the seat. An oxygen tank sat in the back. But the moment Tom saw the scar on his left hand, the one he got after that motorbike crash in Morocco, he knew. "Jack," Tom said quietly. The man didn't look up. Tom stepped closer. "Jack Murdoch." The pen froze in the man's hand. Slowly, he turned his head, squinted. Then, "Well, I'll be damned. You really came." Jack didn't move at first. He just stared at Tom like he was trying to decide whether this was a dream, a memory, or some elaborate prank. Tom didn't break the silence. He just stood there, hands in his jacket pockets, letting Jack process it. For once in his life, Tom Cruise didn't know what to say. Finally, Jack grunted. "You look the same." Tom gave a half-smile. "You look like you lost a fight with a leaf blower." Jack chuckled, dry, raspy. "Guess I stopped doing the Hollywood skincare routine." Tom took a step closer. "I got your email." "I figured." Jack gestured toward a folding chair next to the van. "You want to sit or just stare at me like I'm a wounded dog?" Tom sat. The chair creaked under his weight. The two men sat in silence for a moment. The only sound the hum of distant traffic and the scratch of Springsteen on the old radio. "You still blasting Bruce?" Tom asked. Jack shrugged. "He doesn't lie." Tom nodded, glancing around. The van was cluttered but lived in. An old cooler, a rolled-up sleeping bag, a milk crate full of notebooks and worn paperbacks. No alcohol, no trash, just the look of a man who stopped trying to go somewhere and decided to stay still instead. "I didn't know," Tom finally said. "No one told me what happened." "That's because no one cared," Jack muttered. "And I didn't want them to. Pride's a hell of a drug, Cruise. More addictive than anything I ever touched." "You dropped off the map." "I didn't drop. I fell. There's a difference." Tom leaned back. "So talk to me. What happened after Morocco?" Jack rubbed his face, then pulled out a pack of gum and offered Tom a piece. Tom shook his head. Jack popped one in and started chewing like it gave him something to do while thinking. "After Morocco, I got offered a coordinator gig on that sci-fi flick. Remember the one with the blue aliens and laser wolves?" Tom nodded. "Yeah." Turned it down. Back then, I still wanted to be in the action. Didn't want to sit in a chair yelling safety cues. Then I pulled my shoulder out on a third-story fall, and no one called back. Tom frowned. "No insurance?" Jack laughed, bitter and quiet. "I had SAG-AFTRA like everyone else. Covered just enough to get the sling. Not enough for rehab. Had a couple savings bonds, sold my bike. Got evicted 3 months later." Tom's fists clenched slightly in his jacket pockets. "Why didn't you reach out?" he asked. Jack looked at him sideways. "To who? You? The guy doing red carpets with Spielberg and getting flown around in private jets? Didn't want to be a sob story. Didn't want to be Tom's charity case." Tom looked down, jaw tight. "You weren't a charity case. You were my brother out there." Jack shrugged. "And now I'm a ghost." A silence settled between them. Tom stared across the lot, past the dumpsters, toward the sun reflecting off the Walmart windows. It felt surreal, sitting in the dirt, beside the man who once stood in for him during helicopter crashes and rooftop fights. Now reduced to scraps of memory and secondhand pillows. "You know what I remember most?" Tom said softly. Jack didn't answer, but Tom kept going. "Budapest. Rain machine was busted, so they used real fire hoses. You stood in the downpour for 7 takes straight. Wouldn't let the crew reset until the timing was perfect. And after the last take, when everyone was cold and miserable, you went around shaking every grip's hand, thanking them." Jack let out a long breath. "I remember being soaked. You were the first one on set, last one to leave. You didn't just take hits for me, Jack. You taught me how to be more than a face on a poster." Jack looked away. "Don't romanticize me. I'm a guy living in a van with a bum knee and half a pancreas." Tom smiled gently. "Still got that ego, though." Jack finally cracked a smile, the lines in his face deepening like old leather. "You know, I thought if I ever saw you again, I'd punch you." "You still can," Tom offered. Jack raised a brow. "Maybe later. After I nap." Tom stood up, dusting off his jeans. "Come with me." Jack tensed. "Where?" "There's a diner 5 blocks from here. They make the best grilled cheese in California." Jack shook his head. "I'm not walking into a diner with Tom Cruise. You'll have paparazzi crawling through the vents." "I wore a hoodie," Tom said. "You're 6 feet of recognizable jawline and madness. A hoodie's not magic." Tom grinned. Still afraid of a little attention? Jack looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. Let me put on a clean shirt. Or something close to clean. They walked side by side down the sidewalk, the sun casting long shadows behind them. Tom didn't speak. He just let Jack move at his own pace, limping slightly, but refusing to use the cane tucked into his van's passenger seat. As they passed a row of discount shops, an old man sweeping the sidewalk did a double take, then slowly raised his phone. Tom gave a small nod. The man lowered it. No photos. At the diner, the hostess blinked twice when she saw them. Tom gently put a finger to his lips. She nodded, wordlessly leading them to a booth in the corner. They ordered grilled cheese and black coffee. Jack chewed slowly, thoughtfully, like it was the first proper meal he'd had in days. Maybe weeks. You didn't have to come, Jack finally said, setting down his fork. But you did. Tom leaned forward, eyes steady. And I'm not leaving you in that van. Jack blinked. What does that mean? It means, Tom said, you're coming with me. Jack's coffee mug froze midway to his lips. You're coming with me. Tom said it calmly, without drama, like he was suggesting they catch a matinee. But to Jack, it sounded like a threat. Or a trap. Or worse, pity. He set the mug down carefully. You mean, like, to your house? Tom nodded once. Yeah. No. Jack. No. Jack repeated, firmer this time. You don't get to walk back into my life after 2 decades and start playing Captain Save a Stuntman. Tom leaned back, eyes never leaving him. I'm not playing anything. You think I haven't had offers before? Church vans, halfway house programs, the studio that offered to help me transition with a $2,000 check and a list of shelters. I've been a project before, cruise. I'm not doing it again. Tom let the silence hang for a moment. You think that's what I'm doing? He asked quietly. You think I flew across the ocean, left a set mid-shoot, ditched my team, and came looking for you because I need a good PR headline? Jack didn't respond. He stared at the scratched table, tracing the rim of his coffee mug with a calloused finger. Tom leaned forward again, his voice lower now. You and I made 100 movies together. Most of them never made it to the screen. You took hits for me, real hits. You broke your rib falling down a stairwell, so I could look cool jumping off a balcony. You dislocated your shoulder landing a role I chickened out of. You trained me, yelled at me, protected me. Jack's jaw clenched. And when the business spat you out, I didn't even notice. That's on me. But now I'm here. Jack looked up, eyes red but dry. Why now? Tom inhaled. Because your name showed up in my inbox instead of a headline. And I'd rather see you across from me at a diner than read about your death on TMZ. The words landed hard. Jack shifted in his seat, glanced around the mostly empty restaurant, then back at Tom. I don't want your money, he said finally. I'm not offering money. I don't want to stay in your mansion either. You won't. Then what are you offering? Tom smiled faintly. A room. A bed. Some peace. And maybe, if you're up for it, a second act. Jack chuckled, bitter again. I don't do second acts. My first one barely had a closing scene. Tom stood, dropped a few bills on the table. Think about it. I'll wait by the truck. Jack sat alone for a long time after Tom left. The coffee had gone cold, but he didn't touch it. His hands rested on the table, fingers twitching like they still remembered how to grab a zip line or adjust a harness. He looked out the window and saw Tom leaning against the borrowed Tacoma, face turned toward the sky. Jack had hated the man for years. Not truly, not viciously, but the kind of hate that came from missing someone too long without admitting it. A resentment born out of absence and silence. And yet here he was, Tom Cruise, still waiting. He opened the passenger door slowly, dropping his backpack in the footwell. You still drive like a maniac? Tom grinned. Worse. Jack sighed. Let's go then. They drove for an hour in silence. At first, Jack thought they were heading toward Beverly Hills or some other Hollywood palace. But Tom veered onto a back road leading into the hills above Ventura. It wasn't luxury. It wasn't flashy. It was quiet. A 2-story wooden glass cabin sat on a ridge, overlooking a stretch of golden California hills. Not a mansion, more like a retreat. Secluded. Humble. Real. Jack stared out the window as they pulled into the gravel drive. This yours? Tom nodded. One of them. But this one's mine. They stepped inside. The house smelled like cedar and coffee. walls lined with old film photos, bookshelves stacked with scripts and dog-eared paperbacks. A piano rested beneath a wide bay window. And in the back corner, a simple guest room, clean bed, fresh towels, a framed photo of a film crew circa 1997. Tom pointed toward the door. "That's you on the left." Jack stepped in slowly, staring at the photo. He hadn't seen it in years. A young Jack, arms crossed, sunglasses perched on his forehead, a cigarette tucked behind his ear. Standing beside him, Tom, laughing mid-joke, a hand resting on Jack's shoulder. "I kept it," Tom said. "Had to take it off the main hallway because people kept asking about you." Jack sat on the edge of the bed. "I don't know how to do this," he said softly. "I haven't been around people in a while." "You don't have to do anything," Tom replied. "You're home." Jack looked up, eyes glistening. "That word's heavier than you think." Tom nodded, stepping back. "Take your time. Rest. I'll be downstairs." As Tom closed the door behind him, Jack sat in the silence, staring at the photo in his hands. His hands were shaking, but for the first time in years, they weren't cold. Jack's coffee mug froze midway to his lips. "You're coming with me." Tom said it calmly, without drama, like he was suggesting they catch a matinee. But to Jack, it sounded like a threat. Or a trap. Or worse, pity. He set the mug down carefully. "You mean, like, to your house?" Tom nodded once. "Yeah. No. Jack. No." Jack repeated, firmer this time. "You don't get to walk back into my life after 2 decades and start playing Captain Save a Stuntman." Tom leaned back, eyes never leaving him. "I'm not playing anything. You think I haven't had offers before? Church vans, halfway house programs, the studio that offered to help me transition with a $2,000 check and a list of shelters. I've been a project before, cruise. I'm not doing it again." Tom let the silence hang for a moment. "You think that's what I'm doing?" he asked quietly. "You think I flew across the ocean, left a set mid-shoot, ditched my team, and came looking for you because I need a good PR headline?" Jack didn't respond. He stared at the scratched table, tracing the rim of his coffee mug with a calloused finger. Tom leaned forward again, his voice lower now. "You and I made 100 movies together. Most of them never made it to the screen. You took hits for me, real hits. You broke your rib falling down a stairwell so I could look cool jumping off a balcony. You dislocated your shoulder landing a role I chickened out of. You trained me, yelled at me, protected me." Jack's jaw clenched. "And when the business spat you out, I didn't even notice. That's on me. But now I'm here." Jack looked up, eyes red but dry. "Why now?" Tom inhaled. "Because your name showed up in my inbox instead of a headline. And I'd rather see you across from me at a diner than read about your death on TMZ. The words landed hard. Jack shifted in his seat, glanced around the mostly empty restaurant, then back at Tom. "I don't want your money," he said finally. "I'm not offering money. I don't want to stay in your mansion either." "You won't. Then what are you offering?" Tom smiled faintly. "A room. A bed. Some peace. And maybe, if you're up for it, a second act." Jack chuckled, bitter again. "I don't do second acts. My first one barely had a closing scene." Tom stood, dropped a few bills on the table. "Think about it. I'll wait by the truck." Jack sat alone for a long time after Tom left. The coffee had gone cold, but he didn't touch it. His hands rested on the table, fingers twitching like they still remembered how to grab a zip line or adjust a harness. He looked out the window and saw Tom leaning against the borrowed Tacoma, face turned toward the sky. Jack had hated the man for years. Not truly, not viciously, but the kind of hate that came from missing someone too long without admitting it. A resentment born out of absence and silence. And yet here he was, Tom Cruise, still waiting. He opened the passenger door slowly, dropping his backpack in the footwell. "You still drive like a maniac?" Tom grinned. "Worse." Jack sighed. "Let's go then." They drove for an hour in silence. At first, Jack thought they were heading toward Beverly Hills or some other Hollywood palace. But Tom veered onto a back road leading into the hills above Ventura. It wasn't luxury. It wasn't flashy. It was quiet. A 2-story wooden glass cabin sat on a ridge, overlooking a stretch of golden California hills. Not a mansion, more like a retreat. Secluded. Humble. Real. Jack stared out the window as they pulled into the gravel drive. This yours? Tom nodded. One of them. But this one's mine. They stepped inside. The house smelled like cedar and coffee. Walls lined with old film photos. Bookshelves stacked with scripts and dog-eared paperbacks. A piano rested beneath a wide bay window. And in the back corner, a simple guest room. Clean bed, fresh towels, a framed photo of a film crew circa 1997. Tom pointed toward the door. That's you on the left. Jack stepped in slowly, staring at the photo. He hadn't seen it in years. A young Jack, arms crossed, sunglasses perched on his forehead, a cigarette tucked behind his ear. Standing beside him, Tom, laughing mid-joke, a hand resting on Jack's shoulder. I kept it, Tom said. Had to take it off the main hallway because people kept asking about you. Jack sat on the edge of the bed. I don't know how to do this, he said softly. I haven't been around people in a while. You don't have to do anything, Tom replied. You're home. Jack looked up, eyes glistening. That word's heavier than you think. Tom nodded, stepping back. Take your time. Rest. I'll be downstairs. As Tom closed the door behind him, Jack sat in the silence, staring at the photo in his hands. His hands were shaking, but for the first time in years, they weren't cold. The next morning, the sun rose slow and golden, brushing light across the valley in strokes of amber. Jack was already up. He hadn't slept. Not because of the bed. He was getting used to that. Not even because of the house, but because of the script. It sat on the nightstand beside him like a challenge, like a question he hadn't asked himself in years. Could he still do this? Could he face the camera again? Not as a shadow, not as a double, not as the guy you don't see, but as himself? Could he carry a character who bled so close to his own scars? And if he could, did he even want to? He showered, shaved, and found his way to the porch, coffee already waiting. Tom had been up, too. He always was. The man never seemed to require sleep, just purpose. You read it? Tom asked as he stepped outside, hands tucked in a hoodie pocket. Jack nodded. Twice. Tom sat next to him, watching the morning fog pull back from the hills like a curtain revealing a stage. Well, Jack didn't answer right away. He sipped the coffee, swallowed, exhaled. I'm in. Tom turned, eyebrows raised. Really? Jack smirked. You wrote a role about a broken man limping his way toward redemption. Who the hell else are you going to find that fits the type? Tom grinned, something proud flickering behind his eyes. It's not just a role, Jack. It's your story. You own it. Jack stared out at the view. Let's just hope the audience agrees. 3 weeks later, they pulled up to the backlit of a quiet studio outside Santa Clarita. No paparazzi. No grand entrances. Just the crew prepping for pre-production on what would be Tom's most personal project in decades. Jack stepped out of the car slowly, his boots hitting asphalt like they hadn't in years. The air smelled of sawdust, diesel, and distant coffee, same as it always had. Tom led him through a side door and down a hallway filled with production art. Concept sketches of war-torn cities, battered mercenaries, and vehicles scarred by fire. A world already being built. At the end of the hall stood a door marked Stunt Coordination, Jack Murdoch. Jack froze. You serious? He asked. Tom turned the key and handed it to him. Dead serious. Inside, the room was modest but familiar. Mats, mock weapons, wire rig schematics, a coffee maker, a whiteboard already filled with diagrams. But it was the two figures standing near the back wall that made Jack stop short. Hey, one of them said. You must be the legend himself. It was Marcus Vu, a younger stunt performer, barely 30, known for wire fu and parkour in the newer action films. And beside him, Elena Rowe, ex-military, now a precision driver and fight choreographer with a resume that read like a war journal. Both extended hands. Both looked starstruck. We've heard about you forever, Marcus said. You're why I got into this. Jack blinked. You know me? Are you kidding? Elena said, stepping forward. You're the guy who broke 3 ribs doing the full-roll car crash in High Value Target. That wasn't a rig. That was guts. Tom smirked. Told you they'd remember. Jack shook their hands, still stunned. You're not replacing me? Replacing you? Elena laughed. We're learning from you. Tom placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. This isn't about giving you a favor, Jack. It's about putting you where you belong. This department needs a leader. These two. They're hungry. They want to build something better, safer, smarter, stronger. And you're the only one I trust to teach them. Jack looked at the whiteboard, looked at the team, looked at Tom. Something loosened in his chest. Not pity, not charity, respect. Later that day, on a cleared lot behind the set, Jack stood in a harness, watching the crew reset a basic wire rig. Marcus stood beside him, helmet in hand. You sure you're up for a demo? Marcus asked, half joking. Jack cracked his neck. Let's find out. Tom watched from a distance, arms crossed. The rig activated. Jack ran 10 paces, hit the mark, and flew. Controlled, precise, a textbook high-angle lift. He landed awkwardly, rolled twice, popped up limping slightly but laughing. The crew applauded. Marcus grinned. Still got it. Jack held his ribs. Barely. Elena handed him a bottle of water. You feel that? Jack nodded, breath catching. I feel alive. That evening, back at the house, Tom found Jack sitting at the piano, plinking random keys. You don't play? Tom said, amused. Nope, Jack replied. But I like the sound of things coming back together. Tom sat across from him. You were good today. Jack nodded. It scared the hell out of me. In a good way. Tom leaned back. I want you to think about something. Go on. I don't just want you for this movie. I want you as a partner, co-producer, my stunt coordinator on future projects. I want your name back on call sheets. I want kids in this industry to see yours on credits and say, that's the guy who showed us how it's done. Jack stared at him. You want me back in the game? I want you to change the game. Jack looked down at the keys. And what if I break again? Tom didn't flinch. Then I'll be there, just like you were. They sat in silence for a while, two old dogs with too many bruises, too much memory. Then Jack said, You're out of your damn mind. Tom smiled. You always said that was my best quality. Later, after Tom had gone upstairs, Jack wandered out to the porch, alone beneath the stars. He looked up at the sky, the kind of sky he hadn't noticed in years. He thought of all the moments he'd spent in silence, in the dark, in that van behind the Walmart. Of the years he let pass by, believing the world had forgotten him. Of the pain, the loss, the invisibility. And now here he was, back in the saddle, back in the light. And for the first time in a long, long time, Jack Murdoch didn't feel like a ghost. He felt like a man again. Word spread fast. By the end of the first official production week, Jack Murdoch's name was no longer just a legend whispered behind the stunt rig. It was on everyone's tongue. The grips respected him for his no-nonsense safety protocols. The younger stunt team hung on his every word like disciples. Even the A-list cast asked to rehearse their scenes with the guy crews trusts most. But attention, as Jack well knew, came with a price. It was on day 9, in the corner of a quiet soundstage, when the past walked through the side door without warning. She wore black jeans, a weathered leather jacket, and a tight ponytail streaked with silver. A production badge hung from her neck. Her eyes scanned the set, like someone measuring the cost of coming back. And when they landed on Jack, she froze. Jack, standing across the set, felt like someone had unplugged the power from his spine. Her name was Valerie Kent. And once, a lifetime ago, she was his wife. Tom noticed the change in Jack's face before he even turned around. The blood had drained from his cheeks. His hand, holding a clipboard, suddenly curled into a fist. His jaw clenched. Tom followed his gaze and saw her. He didn't need to ask who she was. He remembered the name, remembered the divorce papers, remembered the way Jack had stopped returning calls that year. I didn't know, Tom said quietly. Jack exhaled. Neither did I. Valerie was speaking to one of the assistant directors now. Tom watched as she was handed a stack of call sheets, then pointed directly toward the stunt area. You want me to handle it? Tom offered. No, Jack said. I'll talk to her. You sure? Jack nodded once. No, but I'll do it anyway. They met behind the rig shed, near the crash pads and wind machines. Jack stood with his back to her as she approached. You really are hard to kill, Valerie said. He turned. She hadn't changed much. Still sharp, still guarded. The same stormy energy that had drawn him to her in the first place. I didn't know you were on this crew, Jack said. Freelance production safety. I was a last-minute hire. They didn't tell me who was running stunts. Jack studied her face. How long's it been? 12 years, she said, not counting the court dates. He winced at that. You look good. Valerie raised an eyebrow. Don't lie. I look tired. Jack smirked. Still can't take a compliment. She folded her arms. What are you doing here, Jack? Last I heard, you were ghosting every union contact in California. I was. She stared at him. You were gone. I was broken. Valerie's expression flickered, just for a second. I begged you to talk to me, she said, voice quieter now. After the injury. After you stopped showing up. I wanted to help. I couldn't let you, Jack said. I didn't know how to be the man you married when I couldn't stand upright without painkillers and shame. They stood in silence, years of words between them unspoken. Valerie broke first. So Cruz dragged you out of the dark? Something like that. She exhaled. He always did have a hero complex. Jack smiled. And I'm still not sure if this is redemption or just another act. Valerie's eyes softened. You were always the real thing, Jack. Even when you were broken. You just forgot it. Later that day, Tom found Jack in the gear room, tightening a harness. She okay? Tom asked. Jack nodded. Yeah. She's not the enemy. You want me to rotate her out? No, Jack said. I want her here. Tom raised an eyebrow. She keeps people safe. She doesn't pull punches. And she knows the worst parts of me. If I can stand in front of her without flinching, I can stand in front of anyone. Tom smiled faintly. That's why I brought you back. Jack looked up. Because of my trauma? No, Tom said. Because of your honesty. The next few weeks moved fast. Jack threw himself into the work. Rehearsals. Safety tests. Choreography meetings. He even started rewriting parts of the second unit action to include more practical effects. Less reliance on CG, more reality. It was what he believed in. What he'd always believed in. Valerie remained professional. Distant, but never unkind. They spoke when needed. Sometimes shared coffee. Once, they even laughed at an intern who knocked over an entire lighting rig by trying to move it alone. The crew started calling Jack the warden, not out of fear, but respect. He enforced rules, protected lives, and never cut corners. Injuries dropped to zero. The set became known as the safest production in town. And Tom, he watched it all like a proud brother. He let Jack lead. He didn't hover, but he always made sure Jack knew. I've got your back. Then came the rehearsal that changed everything. Scene 47, Rooftop Confrontation. Tom's character sprints across a narrow beam, leaps a 6-foot gap, and grabs onto a fire escape ladder mid-fall. It was a classic Tom Cruise move, ambitious, physical, risky. But something went wrong. The harness rig caught late. The wire didn't engage in time. Tom hit the beam edge hard and dropped sideways into the air. Jack moved before anyone else. He grabbed the secondary rope, yanked it, and clipped the backup release. The wire caught, just in time to swing Tom's body away from the scaffold support and down onto a mat. He hit hard, but safe. The entire crew froze. Tom lay on the mat, catching his breath. I'm good, he called out. Jack was already at his side, checking his neck, his limbs, his breathing. His hands didn't shake. Valerie appeared seconds later with the med bag. You pulled the backup manually? She asked. Jack nodded. You haven't done that in 15 years. Jack smiled. Guess some things stick. That night, Tom gathered the core crew and gave a speech. He didn't hold a mic, didn't use a spotlight. Just stood on the soundstage floor in his hoodie and jeans. This man, he said, pointing to Jack, saved my life today. The crew applauded, some cheering. But he's done more than that. He's brought back a level of integrity to this set that I haven't seen in years. We chase perfection in this business, but Jack reminds us, safety is perfection, clarity is power, and trust is everything. Tom looked at Jack. Thanks for reminding me who I'm doing this with and who I'm doing it for. Jack didn't respond. He couldn't. His throat was tight, and his heart was louder than anything else in the room. That night, after everyone had left, Valerie found Jack sitting outside on a bench near the trailers. You okay? She asked. Jack looked up. Yeah, just didn't expect any of this. She sat beside him. I'm proud of you, she said. Jack turned toward her, searching her face. Can I ask you something? She nodded. If I had called back then, do you think we'd have made it? Valerie paused. I don't know, but I wish we'd had the chance to find out. Jack looked down. I'm sorry I disappeared. I'm sorry I stopped looking, she said. They sat together in the silence, the kind that doesn't hurt anymore. It started with a whisper, a tweet, a blurry photo snapped through a fence. Wait, is that Tom Cruise rehearsing with Jack Murdoch? At first, the internet didn't believe it. Jack Murdoch was a ghost, a myth in denim and flame-retardant gloves, last credited over 20 years ago. But the whispers turned to waves. Film blogs, action forums, stunt performer pages. Someone dug up an old behind-the-scenes interview from Midnight Protocol. Jack laughing, limping, waving off the praise like he always did. The post went viral. Then Variety called. Then Deadline. Suddenly, Jack Murdoch was trending. Back at the production office, Jack stared at the headline on Tom's laptop. Legend returns. Cruise's secret weapon makes stunning comeback. He scrolled past the article without reading. This is a bad idea. Tom leaned against the desk, arms crossed. It's not a bad idea. It's a storm. And storms come whether we want them to or not. Jack scowled. I didn't sign up for a media circus. No, Tom said calmly. You signed up to lead a stunt team. And you're doing that better than anyone else ever has. But now people are watching, and that's not a curse. It's an opportunity. Jack looked up. To do what? Become a tabloid redemption story. To set the record straight, Tom said. To show them what real comeback looks like. To remind this industry what loyalty, grit, and experience look like on a screen. Jack stood, pushed the laptop away. I don't need validation. Tom didn't flinch. No, but someone out there does. Some kid who thinks they're washed up at 30. Some vet who got hurt and told they're done. You don't have to do this for you. Jack looked down, silent. Tom stepped closer. Do it for who you were. For the guy who slept in a van and still blasted Springsteen every night. Jack let out a slow breath. If I do it, I do it my way. Tom smiled. I wouldn't expect anything else. The studio scheduled a small press day. No red carpets. No velvet ropes. Just a modest soundstage cleared for chairs, mics, and cameras. Only hand-picked outlets were invited. Those that respected craft over clickbait. Still, Jack was nervous. He stood backstage in a crisp dark shirt and his usual boots. Valerie helped adjust his collar without saying a word. She sensed the nerves. Didn't try to fix them, just stood nearby, like she used to, all those years ago. When they called his name, Jack stepped into the light. It felt like walking into fire. The questions came softly at first. Jack, how does it feel to be back after so long? He paused. It feels strange, like waking up after a very long nap. You know where you are, but the world moved without you. What was your biggest fear coming back? That I wouldn't matter. There was a hush after that. The kind of silence only truth can buy. Tom sat beside him for the last few questions. Tom, why bring Jack back? Tom didn't hesitate. Because I never should have let him leave. The crowd murmured. Jack turned slightly toward him. Tom continued. Jack wasn't just my stunt double. He was my mentor, my coach, my brother. And when the world forgot about him, I forgot too. That's my failure. This film isn't just a story. It's a correction. Jack's throat tightened. He didn't speak again that day. He didn't need to. By the following week, interest in the movie had skyrocketed. Studios began offering international distribution deals before the first scene was even shot. Investors upped their stakes. Merchandise talks began behind closed doors. But Jack didn't care about any of it. He stayed grounded, running drills, adjusting harness setups, coaching the new team. He worked late, arrived early, and treated the youngest stuntmen with the same respect he gave Cruise himself. One morning, Marcus found him stretching before rehearsals and handed him a phone. You've got a message. Jack frowned. From who? Just listen. Jack pressed play. A voice crackled through the speaker, gravelly, uncertain. Mr. Murdoch. My name's Theo. I'm a third-year stunt trainee at Vancouver Film School. I saw your interview last night, and, I just wanted to say thank you. I've got a metal plate in my leg from a bike stunt that went sideways last year. My instructors told me maybe I should consider behind-the-scenes work. But seeing you out there, owning your space, I don't know. It reminded me why I started this in the first place. So thanks. That's it. The message ended. Jack didn't speak for a full minute. Then he handed the phone back and walked out onto the practice mat like nothing happened. But his steps were different now. They carried weight and purpose. A week later, the studio arranged something unexpected. They called it Legacy Day. Instead of a normal shoot, they brought in veteran stuntmen and women from the last 40 years to consult, teach, and share stories. Many of them hadn't been on a set in over a decade. One man walked in slowly with a cane and a crooked smile. His name was Rudy Knox, Jack's mentor back in the 80s. "Look at you," Rudy said, hugging Jack with one arm. "Still got both legs?" "Barely," Jack laughed. Rudy looked around. "You did good, kid. All this is yours." They stood together and watched younger performers take notes, rehearse roles, adjust gear. It felt like passing a torch without having to let go of it. That night, the entire stunt crew stayed late, drinking root beers on set and swapping war stories. Tom joined them, sitting on a crash pad like a rookie, laughing like a man who'd finally built something he could believe in. Later that week, Variety ran a new headline: "The comeback we didn't know we needed. Jack Murdoch is redefining the hero archetype." Jack didn't even flinch when he saw it. He just folded the paper, slid it under a coaster, and kept working. Because he knew the truth. He wasn't the story. The people around him were. The stunt woman who'd broken her back and now led safety training. The young man who'd considered quitting but now dreamed again. The aging legends who now had a seat at the table again. They were the comeback. He was just the spark. But not everyone was happy. In the shadows of rising headlines and surging hype, there were whispers, industry voices from the old guard, bitter at being forgotten. And among them, a name Jack hadn't heard in decades. Gavin Trent, once his closest friend, now his deepest regret. And Gavin was coming to set. They didn't tell Jack Gavin Trent was coming. Maybe they thought it would be easier that way. Drop the bomb and hope the fallout was small. But anyone who knew the history between those two would have known better. The moment Gavin stepped onto the lot, Jack felt it. Like a cold front cutting through the heat. He didn't even need to turn around. The gait was the same. Heavy, proud, unforgiving. And the voice. God, the voice. Well, Gavin said from behind him. If it isn't the ghost who finally decided to haunt again. Jack didn't turn. Not right away. He took a breath, closed the folder in his hand, and finally looked over his shoulder. Gavin Trent stood 10 feet away, wearing a leather jacket 2 decades too young for him and sunglasses he didn't take off indoors. He looked older, broader. His right hand bore the faintest tremor. Nerves, maybe. Or guilt. Jack didn't smile. "Didn't know they were digging up fossils for this one," he said. Gavin smirked. "Just passing through. Heard the legend was alive. Thought I'd see it with my own eyes." Tom arrived seconds later, already sensing trouble. "Gavin, you're early. You said noon." "It's 10. Gavin shrugged. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd come see the magic." Tom stepped between them casually. "We've got a stunt coordination meeting in 10 minutes. You're welcome to observe." Gavin's eyes never left Jack. "Oh, I'm not here to observe." Jack narrowed his gaze. "Then why are you here?" Gavin removed his sunglasses slowly. His eyes were red-rimmed, but sharp. "To finish a conversation we never had. Years ago, Jack and Gavin had been brothers. Not by blood, but by every other measure that counted. They started in the industry together, trained under the same mentors, doubled for each other when directors wanted impossible shots. They took hits, saved lives, and swore nothing would come between them. Until it did. The film was Ashfall. A high-budget, high-danger production that pushed every boundary. Jack had flagged a sequence as unsafe, faulty wiring near a practical explosion. Gavin overrode him, told the director it would sell better reel. The blast misfired. One crew member lost her hearing. Another ended up in the hospital. Jack walked off set that night, and Gavin didn't stop him. They hadn't spoken since. They met alone in the prop warehouse, surrounded by foam bricks and dust-covered set pieces. Jack stood with arms folded. Gavin paced like a man still fighting ghosts. "You're doing great," Gavin said, trying for casual. "The kid stunt team loves you. Even Variety does." Jack didn't reply. "So why don't I feel happy for you?" Gavin asked, laughing bitterly. Why do I feel like every headline with your name on it is a knife in my back? Jack's jaw tightened. Because you haven't grown. That's not on me. I put in my years, Jack. Paid my dues. Directed a dozen second units. And you, what did you do? Vanished. Hid. Slept in parking lots. And now suddenly you're the voice of stunt integrity. Jack stepped closer. You mean the integrity you sold for a producer credit? Gavin's smile dropped. That blast should have been shut down, Jack said. You knew it. You overruled me. I made a judgment call. You made a power grab. Silence. Gavin looked away first. I didn't come here to fight, he said finally. I came to say maybe I should have listened. Jack blinked. I never said it before, Gavin said, quieter now. I watched your life fall apart, and I told myself it wasn't my fault. But it was. I left you out to dry. I let pride decide what friendship meant. And I regret it every damn day. Jack's fists clenched, then slowly loosened. You think saying sorry fixes it? No, Gavin said. But maybe showing up does. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded page. I wrote this last night. Didn't plan to give it to you. But I need to. Jack took the paper slowly, opened it. It was a letter, typed, dated, signed. In it, Gavin confessed to his role in the ashfall incident. He detailed the faulty rigging, the ignored warnings, and how Jack's departure cost him a friendship that meant more than any film ever did. At the bottom, he'd written, if you want to make it public, do it. I won't stop you. Just don't let me be the reason you doubt who you are. Jack folded the letter, pocketed it. He didn't say thank you. Not yet. But he nodded once. And that was enough. Tom found Jack later that night in the gym, taping his wrists before a training session. Heard Gavin left the lot. Jack didn't look up. Yeah. You two talk. Jack nodded. Yeah. Tom hesitated. You okay? Jack paused, then looked at Tom, really looked at him. I thought I came back here to finish something, he said. To prove I wasn't broken. To reclaim something I'd lost. And Jack exhaled. Turns out, I came back to forgive something. Someone. Maybe even myself. Tom smiled. That sounds a hell of a lot more important. Jack chuckled. I still hate the spotlight. You don't need the spotlight, Tom said. You are the light. Just took you a while to realize it. Later that week, Valerie found Jack sitting on the edge of the soundstage after rap. I heard about Gavin. Jack nodded. He brought closure. Do you believe him? I believe people change when they're tired of pretending they haven't. Valerie sat beside him. So what now? Jack looked out across the lot, the crew laughing, packing up, rehearsing. The stunt team he'd trained. The family he'd rebuilt. Now, he said, we finished the damn movie. The shot was simple. At least, that's what they kept saying. A controlled rooftop drop, 12 feet to a rigged platform, followed by a roll, and then a sprint into cover. 3 seconds of action on camera. Maybe less. But Jack knew better. This wasn't just a stunt. It was the stunt. The fall was nearly identical to the one that ended everything for him all those years ago. The one where a miscalculated landing had torn through his knee, fractured 2 ribs, and cracked open something deeper. His belief that he was invincible. Back then, the world had moved on without him. Now, they were asking him to recreate it. Tom didn't push. He knew Jack too well for that. He simply handed him the revised storyboard and said, your call. We have doubles on standby. No pressure. Jack studied the diagram in silence. Same elevation. Same velocity. Same trajectory. But this time, the rig was better. The tech had improved. And the man who would be doing it wasn't the same man who fell the first time. Still, the air in Jack's lungs felt heavy. He stood in the center of the soundstage where the rooftop had been constructed, a steel platform raised by scaffolding, lined with crash pads, safety wires, and spotters on all corners. Marcus and Elena watched from below, silent, knowing this moment wasn't about instruction or teamwork. It was about ghosts. Valerie approached slowly. She didn't speak right away. She just stood beside him, watching the crew tighten the final cables. Your knee okay? She asked. Jack nodded. Better than my pride. She smirked. That bad, huh? I told myself I was past this, he admitted. That I didn't need to prove anything. You don't. Jack turned to her. Then why does it feel like I do? Valerie looked at him for a long moment, then gently placed a hand on his shoulder. Because that pain never got its closure. You don't need to prove something to them. You need to settle it with yourself. An hour later, they were ready to roll. The cameras were rigged. The lights were set. Tom stood just off frame, waiting for Jack to signal go. The entire crew was watching, not out of spectacle, but solidarity. Jack stood on the edge of the rooftop prop, wind machine humming softly, simulating a light breeze. The scene was set in a foreign city at dusk. The story called for his character, a former mercenary seeking redemption, to make a choice, jump or turn back. Fiction mirrored reality. Jack exhaled. Time slowed. His heartbeat steadied, not with fear, but with memory. The pain, the shame, the years in the van, the nights without warmth, the silence, the anger, and then the return, the house, the people, the second chance. He took one step back, then ran forward and jumped. The drop wasn't clean. He landed slightly off-center, rolled awkwardly, and came up slower than expected. His breath caught in his throat. A ripple of concern moved through the crew. Tom stepped forward, hand raised, eyes locked on Jack. But Jack raised a fist. "I'm good," he called out. Valerie exhaled behind the monitor. Marcus hooped. They reset. He did it again. This time perfectly. They used the second take in the final cut. But they kept the first one in the behind-the-scenes reel, with Jack's voice over it saying, "Sometimes getting back up looks ugly, but it still counts." Over the next 3 weeks, Jack's presence on set became something more than just a coordinator or performer. He became an anchor. He calmed panicked interns. He adjusted the grip on a new recruit's harness before a high fall. He stayed late to teach old-school tumble drills to kids who'd only known wire work. He wasn't just training them for film. He was teaching them discipline, respect, survival. He taught them how to fall and how to get back up. One night, after wrap, Tom pulled Jack aside. "We got an offer," he said. "One of the major festivals. They want to screen the film early." Jack raised an eyebrow. Already, they saw the dailies. Word's out. This film, it's not just action. It's heart. They feel it. Jack hesitated. "You want me to go? I want you to speak." Jack blinked. "No." "Yes," Tom said, grinning. "You're going to stand on stage, look them in the eye, and remind them that real legends don't fade. They resurface." Jack shook his head. "Public speaking was never my thing. Neither was falling off rooftops. And look how that turned out." On the day of the private screening, Jack stood backstage at the theater, tuxedo crisp, palms sweaty. Valerie stood beside him in a sleek black dress, smiling calmly. "You've faced worse," she said. "Like what?" "Fire. Broken bones. My mother." He laughed, tension breaking. Then a voice in his earpiece. "You're up." Tom stepped out first, greeted by applause. He waved once, then turned toward the curtain. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "I want to introduce the man who made this film possible. Not just the stunts, not just the story, but the soul of it. Jack Murdoch." Jack stepped into the light. The applause was real, raw, not just for what he'd done, but for who he had become again. He didn't speak for long, just enough. "I used to think the worst thing that ever happened to me was falling," he said. "But I've learned since the worst thing is staying down." He paused. "This movie is about second chances, and I'm living proof you don't need to be perfect to be worthy of one." The audience stood. He hadn't finished his sentence, but they had already heard the message. Backstage, Valerie hugged him tight. "You did it." Jack shook his head. "We did. It happened overnight. One screening, one standing ovation, one speech from a man who never intended to speak again. And suddenly, Jack Murdoch wasn't just a stunt legend. He was a story. By the next morning, his name trended worldwide. Hashtag Jack Murdoch returns. The man behind the fall. From broken to backbone. The real hero behind Cruise's comeback film. The world wanted more. Producers called. Podcasts begged. An autobiographer even offered to ghostwrite his life story. Advance check already prepared. But Jack didn't answer any of them. Not at first. He was still sitting in the small garden behind Tom's house, sipping black coffee, staring out at the morning mist. Valerie joined him quietly, handing him a folded copy of The Hollywood Reporter. He glanced at the headline. Murdoch's Rise. A tale Hollywood didn't know it needed. He sighed. Feels fake. She sat beside him. It's not. Jack tapped the edge of the paper. They want me to be an icon. I'm just a man who nearly gave up. Valerie looked him in the eye. And that's exactly why it matters. Over the next week, the film's buzz exploded. Studios greenlit international releases before post-production even wrapped. Behind-the-scenes featurettes began circulating, many centered around Jack's leadership. But with the fame came more than applause. It brought unfinished business. Jack was alone in the studio office when the receptionist buzzed him. There's someone here asking for you. Says she knew you from Arizona. Jack's heart skipped. He opened the door. Standing there was a woman in her mid-30s, plain clothes, uncertain posture, but familiar eyes. I think we met a long time ago, she said. My name is Renee. Jack stared. His breath caught. Renee? Hastings. She nodded. Jack stepped back, stunned. You were just a kid. Back on Desert Runner. She smiled faintly. You saved my life. That gas fire. We would have died if you hadn't dragged us out. Jack felt the memory slam back. The explosion. The burning set. The little girl trapped under debris. I never forgot, she said. I watched your interview. It made me remember. You didn't just survive that industry. You saved people in it. He swallowed. You didn't come for an autograph, did you? She shook her head. I came to say thank you. That night, Jack sat with Valerie and Tom by the fireplace. Why does all this feel harder than the fall, he asked. Tom leaned back. Because pain is simple. But being seen, being known, that takes courage. Jack looked at Valerie. I didn't want to become a symbol. She nodded. You didn't. You became a mirror. They're not celebrating you. They're finding hope in their own wreckage. More doors opened. Old cast members reached out. Directors who'd forgotten to credit him wanted to reconnect. Even his estranged brother left a voicemail. You're making us proud, Jack. Even Mom would have cried if she saw that speech. Jack didn't know what to do with that. So he didn't do anything at all. Instead, he returned to the one place that still made sense, the training mat. Where sweat still meant something. Where gravity didn't care about headlines. Where you earned every inch with calloused hands. He started showing up before call time, mentoring the youngest recruits, correcting posture, demonstrating falls. One of them, a soft-spoken girl named Talia, struggled with confidence. During a break, she approached him nervously. I don't think I can do this, she whispered. Jack crouched beside her. Why? She hesitated. Because I've failed 3 times in a row. Maybe I'm not cut out for it. Jack nodded slowly. Want to know how many times I failed that rooftop stunt? She blinked. How many? Every night I slept in a van. Every time I refused to call. Every time I said I was fine when I wasn't. He looked her in the eye. Failing isn't what breaks you. Hiding is. She stood taller after that. And the next time she jumped, she landed clean. The attention didn't fade. But Jack stopped fearing it. He stopped seeing it as a spotlight. And started seeing it as a signal. Others were watching. Others were hurting. Others needed proof that the road back was real. So he answered the call. A short documentary was greenlit. Falling Forward, the Jack Murdoch story, featuring old stunt reels, interviews, and crew testimonies. Jack agreed only if proceeds went to the Stunt Performers Relief Fund. He appeared in 3 more interviews. Always kept them raw. No pre-written lines. No glossy sound bites. Only truth. And every time, his voice shook just a little. Because he meant it. One day, as filming neared its final week, Tom brought him into a quiet meeting room. I've got one more surprise, he said. Jack smirked. Another ex-wife I forgot about. Tom laughed. Worse. He handed him a tablet. On it was a digital layout. A plan for a new division within the film's production company. The Jack Murdoch Stunt Fellowship. A mentorship program. Paid apprenticeships. On-set therapy for stunt injuries, both physical and mental. Jack stared at the screen. You named it after me? Tom nodded. You didn't just come back, Jack. You brought everyone with you. Jack leaned back, quiet for a long time. Then, slowly, he said, let's do it. But just as the path seemed clear, a storm gathered. And it came from the one place Jack hadn't looked. His past injury records. A studio executive had flagged something in his old files, Something about liability, about long-term cognitive trauma, about whether Jack was legally fit to perform high-intensity work. They called an emergency review. Jack stood in the boardroom alone, across from 5 suits who had never seen a fall but spoke in cold percentages. "We just need to confirm," one of them said, "that your current involvement doesn't pose a risk to the company." Jack clenched his jaw. "I risked my life for this industry," he said. "And now you're asking if I'm too broken to teach kids how not to die." "No one's questioning your passion," the lead executive said. "Just your liability." Jack stood. "Then let me make it simple." He pulled a letter from his pocket and slid it across the table. "I already wrote my resignation. If you're going to doubt me, you can keep it." And then he walked out. The room was silent behind him. But he didn't wait to hear their response. Because some things you don't beg for, you prove. Jack didn't go home. He didn't head to the gym. He didn't return to set. He drove. No destination. No route. Just the open highway outside Los Angeles, headlights washing across the pavement like his past trying to catch up. The letter sat folded in his passenger seat, his resignation. Pre-written. Preemptive. Preemptively heartbroken. He hadn't meant to give it. But something about that boardroom, the clean suits, the soft words hiding hard judgments, it made him feel like dirt on a polished floor again. Like his worth could still be questioned after everything. Meanwhile, back at the lot, word spread like fire. Jack Murdoch had walked out. Valerie found out first. She marched straight into the executive suite without knocking. "You're making a mistake." One of the younger execs looked up nervously. "We're just reviewing safety protocol." "You're erasing a man's legacy behind a desk," she snapped. "He built this movie, this team, this trust." Tom joined her moments later. No tie, no filter. "He's not just a stunt guy. He's the spine of this film. You cut him, and this whole production slumps over." The lead executive tried to stay calm. "We're not cutting him. We're asking for medical verification." "You already got it," Valerie said, slamming a folder on the table. "Physical therapist, neurologist, orthopedic specialist. All cleared." He blinked. "He never gave us these. Because he thought you'd see him before his chart." The cast found out next. Carlos, the sound tech, started a group thread. Not without Murdoch. Then came the grip crew. The second unit. Even the stunt rookies, one by one, they stopped work. Not as a strike. As a stand. No yelling. No signs. Just stillness. Refusal to roll. Until Jack returned. Tom knew Jack wouldn't answer his phone. So he drove to the one place he figured Jack might go. The cliffside viewpoint above Route 49. A place they'd once scouted for a mountain chase back in 2003. A sequence they never filmed, but talked about like it was real. And there he was, sitting on the hood of his pickup, elbows on knees, staring out at nothing and everything. Tom parked beside him, said nothing, just stood there, wind rushing past like applause from the earth. Minutes passed. Finally, Jack spoke. "Why does it still feel like I haven't earned it?" Tom stepped closer. "Because people who've suffered forget they're allowed to win." Jack exhaled. "They want proof I'm not a liability. I already gave it to them." Jack looked over. "Valerie had your clearances on file." She handed them over. "You're in the clear." Jack blinked. "Seriously?" Tom nodded. "But that's not the point." Jack tilted his head. "The crew stopped," Tom said. "Refused to work. Not in protest. In loyalty. Because they believe in something. Someone." Jack's throat tightened. "All this time," he whispered, "I thought I came back to repair myself." "No," Tom said softly. "You came back to remind the rest of us how to build right in the first place." By the next morning, Jack returned to set. No announcement. No speech. Just showed up early, wearing his old boots and new bruises, and started checking the harnesses before anyone else arrived. And one by one, the team returned to work. Quietly. Proudly. Not because he told them to, but because he showed them how. The studio never brought up the incident again. The letter was shredded. The story wasn't leaked. And Jack never said thank you for their change of heart. Because real respect isn't begged for. It's earned back. 3 days later, production hit a milestone, final action sequence shoot. A high-speed train stunt filmed on location. Massive rig. Tight schedule. Dozens of moving parts. And as usual, Jack was running it all. But this time, Valerie stood beside him. Not as an ex-wife, not as a safety officer, but as a partner. Tom approached, already in costume. You ready? Jack smiled faintly. Been ready. Tom raised an eyebrow. You're not jumping with me, are you? Jack pulled down his sunglasses. Try and stop me. The sequence went perfectly. One take. One clean shot. No injuries. Just thunderous applause from crew, directors, and even nearby press. But what happened next, no one expected. As the stunt wrapped, the director motioned to Jack. We've got something for you. Jack frowned. What? The crowd parted. And standing there, on the edge of the platform, was a young man in his 20s, holding a folded vest. Mr. Murdoch, he said nervously. I'm the intern who helped on your third unit 2 weeks ago. We all pitched in. Jack stepped closer. The intern handed him the vest. On it, stitched in deep red. The fall guy. The one who got back up. Jack held it, speechless. Tom clapped a hand on his shoulder. You earned it. Jack shook his head slowly. I didn't earn it alone. That night, as the team gathered for the wrap party, Tom gave one last toast. To the guy who taught us that bruises fade, but loyalty lasts forever. He turned to Jack. To the man who fell and made falling look noble. Jack raised his glass. To all of you. Then paused. And to the next person sleeping in a van tonight, thinking no one will ever call them again. Your story's not over. I'm living proof. Silence. Then cheers. And somewhere in the back of the room, someone cried. The day of the film's release felt like a thunderstorm held in place by sheer will. Clouds above Hollywood thick with expectation. Billboards glowing across the skyline. Red carpets rolled out in slow motion. But Jack Murdoch didn't attend the premiere. Not the red carpet. Not the press circuit. He watched from a small second-row seat in a dark neighborhood theater in Burbank, next to Valerie, behind a row of teenagers who had no idea the man behind them had helped choreograph every frame of what they were about to see. He didn't need limos or flashing lights. He just wanted silence. And truth. As the film opened, the audience leaned in. It wasn't just action. It was weight, emotion, real bruises hidden beneath the makeup. You could feel it, because Jack had bled into the frame. The rooftop stunt landed with raw impact. Gasps echoed. Then the camera caught his face, brief, uncredited, but unmistakable. The room tensed. Jack didn't flinch. Neither did Valerie. By the time the credits rolled, the entire row in front of him stood and applauded. One woman turned to him and said, Man, whoever did those stunts deserves an Oscar. Jack smiled. I'll pass the message along. Online, the film exploded. Critics called it a visceral punch disguised as a blockbuster. Social media lit up with gifs of Jack's falls, his gritted teeth coaching clips, and quotes from his behind-the-scenes interviews. He didn't fall back into fame. He fell forward into something better. Jack Murdoch is the soul of this film. The best part of the movie wasn't even on screen. It was learning who was behind it. Hashtags returned. Hashtag fall forward. Hashtag Murdoch method. Hashtag silent strength. Valerie read one aloud at breakfast. I was homeless when I saw Jack's clip. I'm not anymore. He reminded me that it's okay to be broken, just not to stay that way. Jack just nodded. He never knew words could hit harder than the falls. A week after the release, Tom invited Jack to the Tonight Show taping. He resisted, but this time he showed up. No tux, just a charcoal blazer and the same boots he'd worn on set. The host welcomed Tom with the usual fanfare. Laughter, applause, movie questions. Then, halfway through, he turned to the camera and said, But tonight isn't just about a film. It's about who made that film possible. The man behind the scenes, behind the bruises. Please welcome Jack Murdoch. The audience rose before he even stepped out. As Jack walked onto the stage, applause thundered through the walls. Not celebrity applause. Respect. Tom shook his hand, then stepped back, letting Jack take the seat alone. The host leaned in. Jack, you've been called a ghost, a legend, a myth. What do you call yourself now? Jack chuckled softly. A man who learned how to stand again. The audience hushed. And what do you want this movie to do for others? Jack looked up, right into the camera. I want the kids who've been told they're too broken, too late, too far gone, to know that none of those things are true. I slept in a van. I almost gave up. But here I am. He paused. You're not done. Not even close. The next day, his inbox overflowed. Veterans, single parents, injured athletes, former stunt workers, recovering addicts, even doctors, all saying the same thing. You gave me the courage to start again. Tom pulled him aside 2 days later. We've had calls from 3 networks. They want to produce a limited docu series. Your story, other stories like it. Real stunts, real people, real comebacks. Jack stared at him. You want me to be a host? Tom nodded. Not a host. A bridge. Jack exhaled. I don't know if I'm that guy. You already are. That night, Jack went back to the van. Not to sleep, just to sit. It was still parked in the same garage he used to hide it in. He sat in the front seat, engine off, windows cracked. On the dashboard sat a note. Folded. Yellowed. He'd written it years ago. You failed. You're done. No one's coming. He stared at it, then pulled out a pen, crossed out the last line, wrote, You came back anyway. The ceremony wasn't supposed to be grand. Just a quiet gathering at the old Warner lot, a converted warehouse where hundreds of stunt performers had trained, bled, and bonded for over 30 years. Now, it was being renamed the Jack Murdoch Center for Stunt Arts and Recovery. When they asked him if he wanted to speak, Jack hesitated, not out of fear, but because he knew this was the last speech that would truly matter. He stepped up to the modest podium. No teleprompter, no flashbulbs, just faces. Young, old, scarred, smiling. And behind them, in the corner of the warehouse, his van. Still dented, still parked like a relic. Jack grinned. Funny thing about that van, he said, voice steady. I used to think it was a coffin. A rolling tomb for a guy who didn't know how to move forward. He paused, scanning the crowd. But I was wrong. It wasn't a grave. It was a bridge. A place to wait until I could believe in myself again. A long silence. Everyone here knows the feeling of hitting the floor. Some of us professionally. Some of us emotionally. A few chuckles. A few tears. But falling isn't failure. Staying down is. And not because it's weak, but because it's lonely. You start thinking maybe you deserve to be invisible. Jack's voice cracked slightly. He didn't stop. This center isn't about stunts. It's about remembering that we matter, that pain doesn't erase purpose, that you can lose your place and still find your people again. Applause rose gently. Tom Cruise, standing in the front row, wiped at the corner of his eye and smiled like a brother. Valerie stood beside him, arms crossed, her face unreadable, but her presence louder than any words. Jack stepped down without a bow, just a quiet nod, as if to say, now it's yours. Over the next year, the center changed lives. Former stunt performers with spinal injuries found new purpose teaching movement theory. Combat veterans led breathing workshops. The back room, the same one where Jack once taped his busted knee, was converted into a mentorship hub where no one left unseen. And Jack, he didn't run it. He simply showed up, day after day, to train, to listen, to guide. He turned down more film offers than he could count. Let the kids shine, he'd say. My story's been told. One night, after a long day, Valerie found him in the quiet of the gear room. You're still here, she said. Jack looked up, grease on his hands. Some things still squeak. She walked over, sat on the bench beside him. You know they want to name the new apprenticeship scholarship after you too. Jack sighed. Too much. I'm not trying to be a statue. Valerie looked him in the eye. You're not. You're a starting line. He stared down at his palms. Scarred. Calloused. Real. What if they expect too much? Valerie tilted her head. Then they'll see what it looks like to give what you can. That's enough, Jack. It always was. Later that week, a new trainee approached him. Young. Nervous. Barely 20. Mr. Murdoch? Can I ask something? Jack leaned on a crate. Shoot. Were you ever scared you'd never come back? Jack didn't flinch. Every day, he said. Until I did. The kid nodded, then asked the real question. So how do you know when you're ready? Jack smiled. You don't. You just show up anyway. On the 1-year anniversary of the film's release, the studio held a private screening, just for the crew, the stunt teams, and their families. Jack didn't want to attend, but Valerie convinced him. This time, They didn't sit in the back. They sat in the middle. And when the rooftop scene played, Jack didn't look at the screen. He looked at the faces around him. The awe, the joy, the reminder. He wasn't the hero on screen, but he had been the bridge that got them there. As the credits rolled, Tom stood up and clapped. Not to the screen, but to Jack. The room followed. It wasn't noise. It was thanks. Jack Murdoch stood. He didn't wave. He didn't speak. He just put a hand to his heart. And for the first time in years, he let them love him back. The final scene wasn't filmed. It was lived. A quiet Sunday morning. Jack sitting on the back step of the center, sipping black coffee, watching Talia coach a class of rookies on how to fall properly. She mimicked his old posture, even had his dry sarcasm. He smiled. The van still sat parked across the lot. But this time it was clean. Windows repaired. Inside, shelves filled with donated gear, spare uniforms, emergency cash. A sign on the door now read, "If you're lost, you can sleep here tonight." I did. JM. Jack leaned back, stretched his sore shoulder, and closed his eyes. Not to escape, but to remember. Because the fall had been long. But the rise had been worth it.